Roger Belanger's future was unlimited when the 18-year-old pulled on the sweater of the Pittsburgh Penguins in September of 1984. Chosen with the great Mario Lemieux to take the worst team in the NHL to a Stanley Cup, the first-round draft choice was a hard-shooting, hard-skating prospect.
He played hard, and that was his type of game. He was nice to watch. Buzzed around like Rick Tocchet and that. That's the type of player he was.
But 5 years later, Belanger's boyhood dream of being a rich, successful NHL star lay in tatters. 3 back operations had rendered him unable to work, let alone play hockey. Belanger was broken financially and emotionally by his nightmare. Today he feels abandoned by the Penguins, his agent Don Meehan, and his union.
This poor hockey player shouldn't have us. There was no need to have us. If things had been done right in the first place, there'd have been no need to have a lawyer.
After 3 seasons of pain and disappointment, Roger Belanger finally submitted to surgery in the spring of '87. There was optimism from the doctors in Pittsburgh that surgery would help him back to the NHL. Instead, he was back on the operating table again within 5 months. This time, doctors removed the other disc he'd injured 3 years earlier, the one that was revealed by the CT scan. Within weeks of the second surgery, Belanger was trying to save his career.
They don't say, hey, stay off skates. They don't say...
No, they actually say the opposite.
Yeah?
Get back on skates, which was unheard of.
Farmed out to Muskegon, Michigan in December of 1987, Belanger managed to play just 7 more games after the operation, his final 7 pro games. Then another knee injury effectively ended his career. When his contract expired in the summer of 1988, Roger Belanger, first-round draft choice, was a former hockey player.
At that time, too, I've already had 2 surgeries, and basically it's going to take a bloody miracle for me to be, well, I'm never going to be healthy again. That's you know, you can't deny that. But I didn't know what to do. I was lost.
Everybody knew he was great in my hometown. Everybody knew he was a great person, great hockey player. And now for everybody to look at him differently, he feels like he maybe let them down and let himself down and his family down.
He seems to have a lot of anger in him, and just not the boy that, you know, the guy that he used to be, or the boy he used to be.
The pain and the disappointment of his career were bad enough when Roger Belanger retired. But the runaround the Belanger family experienced after his retirement from the medical and hockey establishment they trusted turned out to be just as painful on Roger Belanger. Back in Welland, Belanger underwent a 3rd back operation, a spinal fusion in 1990. He now has a drop right foot and little feeling in his right leg. He works here at this community center in Niagara Falls, Ontario, a job that requires little lifting or heavy exertion. When his son's career ended in 1988, Roger Belanger Sr. began writing to anyone and everyone in the NHL establishment, looking for answers. What happened to his son's career? One man he wrote to was NHL Players Association Director Alan Eagleson, who personally administered the players' disability insurance coverage. But instead of offering support, the director of his son's union told Mr. Belanger that according to his files, it would appear Roger did not play any games in the National Hockey League. 6 months later, Eagleson finally located Roger Belanger's playing record. Then he informed him that since he had played more than 20 games after the body check, the back injury was considered healed for insurance purposes, and he was thus disqualified from NHLPA disability insurance. The final indignity came when the Belangers at last obtained an injury arbitration hearing in New York with the NHL. It was 1992. After 3 years of work, $11,000 of expenses, the Belangers were told the arbitrator couldn't rule on whether Pittsburgh was negligent in its treatment of Belanger, because once again, the Belangers had waited too long to file a complaint. It was a classic catch-22. The Belangers didn't learn the origin of the back problems until it was too late to do anything about them.
Looking back at it, what would you say your mistakes were?
Our mistake was we didn't have any, we didn't know anything about the other side of the game of hockey. Right? We have no knowledge on the rules and regulations. We didn't know anything about policies, NHL policies.
They decided everything was in my head, and the real reason had nothing to do with a spinal cord injury. The reason Mike doesn't want to play is because he's just not a player. He's not a competitor, he's kind of bailing out in the team and letting his teammate down, and also his family, I might add.
The runaround from the NHL and Alan Eagleson has a familiar ring for former NHLer Mike Robitaille. While playing with Vancouver in the 1980s, the 10-year NHL veteran suffered severe neck pain and numbness. Robitaille could barely walk, let alone skate, yet the Canucks team doctor cleared him to play. Robitaille attempted to suit up.
We were trained, I mean, God, you know, don't go off in a stretcher. I mean, you know, you could be half dead, just don't let the other guy know.
Racked with pain, Robitaille finally checked into a Vancouver hospital. Doctors there told him he had a spinal contusion. One more hit could render him paralyzed. Robitaille later won a $500,000 lawsuit from the Canucks, but with no help from his union leader, Alan Eagleson.
I know that after I went down, my career was over. I left a total of 5 phone calls for him to get in touch with me, Bruce, and let me know, where do I stand? Where do I stand legally now? What happens with my hospitalization? What do I do, Alan? Where do I go? I mean, I don't know what to do. Help me out here. I've been badly done. I need some advice. I need some character witnesses. Could you help me out? I never even got a return phone call. My whole life was at stake.
Robitaille says that the reward for a player like himself or Belanger standing up to the lords of hockey simply transcends money.
I got my dignity back. I wasn't Mike Robitaille, the guy that doesn't want to play, was letting the team down all the time. They were lying about that.
It would be my position that if the owner knew that the kid had suffered an injury which potentially can devastate him down the road, it's the owner's obligation to tell the kid and to stop the kid from playing.
LAURIE MANDEL is a senior partner at Thomson Rogers in Toronto, the firm representing the Belangers in their lawsuit against the Penguins, Don Meehan, and the NHLPA. He says the Belanger case highlights the ages-old dilemma of athletes playing with pain.
And if they admit that they're injured, there's what I call a wimp factor. The other players are saying, you're not injured. What do the owners think? The kid's not injured. What's the coach think? The kid's not injured. He can play. So all the more so that this kid be protected, not just from the owners that pay him, but from himself.
I know I've been hurt a lot of times, and other players have been hurt times, and they want to go and play. But I think you need a medical guy that's going to come in and say, hey, you can't play today.
In the end, the determination to play NHL hockey that made Roger Belanger a great prospect was his own worst enemy.
With Roger, you know, he didn't produce as a Mario would, so he figured, you know, he's got to prove himself. He's got to prove he can play in the league, and got to play with a little pain.
By trying to prove he belonged in the NHL, even with crippling pain, Roger Belanger made his problems worse. Trained to obey the rules of the game, he didn't realize the rules of the hockey business till it was too late.
I'm disabled for the rest of my life. I've got denied of something I tried to pursue since I was 3 years old, and it's all gone. And it went up so quick, and you know, without any explanations or anything or any help from anybody, and it's mentally and physically it can ruin a person. It basically did that for me.
The Penguin line, Doug BODGER. Lay it off to Roger Belanger and up to Mario Lemieux. Lemieux comes in. Now good lead pass. Here's Belanger in. Belanger shoots one, and that went wide. Up to Belanger.
And Don Meehan, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the NHL Players Association all declined to comment on this story for the national sports. And that's all for this hour. Next hour, all your NHL highlights, basketball.